I come home from work sometimes. I come home from my job. I had a hard day at the office, dealing with a bunch of rubber snakes. One of the kids is in the driveway. He's shooting skeet with my rifle. He has your mother's eyes. I think he should give them back.
Hello, colleagues across town, across the globe, and currently in orbit. You know who I'm talking about, don't you, baby? Anyway, it is the 29th of September in the year of our Lord 2022. That's 2022 for those of you who need it alliterated a little differently. This is Paul Colby and the Investigators. I'm Paul Colby. You know me well. I've been around here for so many years that I have a mailing address here. I'm kidding. Don't send those things to me here, especially canned goods. We don't have an opener. But I do have several investigators who are among the most diligent, the most talented, and the most cerebral in this part of the world. They work for me because they want a job that is a challenge. I want to start by introducing one of the most challenged people that I know, Ben Official. Ben I have known for quite a while now. We go way back. I can't say where we go back to, but we go way back. And I've known him in many different lines of work that he claimed to be engaged in. But one of them right now, he claims to be an expert on dating habits in the mineral kingdom. As a matter of fact, you're lecturing right now, I believe, on dating habits in the mineral kingdom. Look at this slide here. I attended this lecture the other night. I learned things I didn't think I wanted to know.
It's all the things that I learned in my trip to Indonesia. It was a transatlantic full-contact Scrabble event that got me into spelunking. And, you know, there came a point after being poked in the tuchus by too many stalagmites that I thought, let's learn about the most boring form of dating.
A lot of these minerals don't really get around much. I guess that's why you're saying it's boring.
Yes, well, non-migratory, unless you have the time. It's sort of on a long-scale commitment.
Geologically, something like Mesozoic to Jurassic and...
Jurassic.
Yeah.
Yes, Miassic, yes.
It's okay. You are also the head of a commission. In this case, the Citizens Commission to enumerate discrepancies. That sounds pretty fascinating.
I'm glad you brought that up. Literally what we do is we find the appropriate number for things that, you know, are a little ironic. What you are referring to, lay people see as discrepancies. So like number 23, the more something scares you, the more you should probably do it. Number 56, the harder you try to keep someone, the more you push them away. 594, the only constant is change. And then 667, America First candidates who manufacture their campaign hats in China.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, you don't, you're just numbering these discrepancies. You're not actually addressing any of them.
There's a certain amount of dressing down that happens when we present this, but otherwise that's about as far as we go.
Okay. And as usual, as is so often the case with my investigators, you have a very popular book, and it's very timely for these times in which we live. It's Tips for Enjoying the Orwellian Era.
Yeah. So Georgie, he was sort of a fastidious guy. You know, he had his own line of clothes detergent. So, I mean, I can tell you're not a fan of the laundromat there,
Not
boss.
anymore.
But so we should also be so lucky as to experience the fresh smell of totalitarianism in the morning.
I guess I'm going to feel better about it tomorrow after a good. Well, I don't know. I don't sleep that well anymore. But thank you for bringing me up to speed, as it were. Norma Lee, you may know Norma Lee. Norma is a freelance speechwriter for NFL linebackers, and I guess anybody else in the NFL who needs a speech written.
That is true. That is true.
You know something? Every time I have watched somebody speak after a football game, they say, you know, God was with me down there on the field.
Yeah, you know what, boss? I actually coined that phrase. We got to talk about God. We got to talk about Jesus. I did not realize until I took a correspondence course in theology that Jesus was that into football, because he's apparently heavily involved in football. He was actually a linebacker for Nazareth State when he was coming up.
I was confused. I saw pictures of him, but the number was 44. Now, until they changed the rules, I mean, those numbers mean something different to other people, huh?
Yeah, it's true. It all goes back to old scrolls, and you gotta, 44 may actually be 33. We don't know, so yeah.
Is it true? You would know. I am told that there is really only one size of shoulder pads that all of these guys wear.
That is true. Some players on the field are actually 5'4", but their stats with the shoulder pads put them up to 6'7" and 350 pounds. But they have varying sizes of butt pads though.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh. Now,
why those ladies like to watch the football.
All right. Now, speaking of citizens' commissions, you are also on a citizens' commission. It is called the Citizens Commission for a Fact-Free Environment.
Yes.
How come?
Because, it's easier to not get into arguments with people if everyone has their own set of facts. So, too many arguments happen because of that. So, when they go low, we go off in a totally different direction. It works for everybody.
And I guess that ties into the fact that your new book, I was just looking at some of the notes at the end, Pandering for Dummies. I guess that's because with all these competing sets of facts, you actually have to pander if you're going to convince anybody of anything.
You do. If you want to stay out of an argument, you got to do a lot of pandering. But luckily, I wrote it for dummies because dummies are a lot easier to work with when it comes to that kind of thing.
So I recognize the dummy in that cover, but you're not saying that all dummies are dumb.
No, not all dummies are dumb. Some of them are actually dummies like mannequins and such. So
okay,
crash
good.
test dummies. They serve a very, very valued place in our workforce.
All right. To your immediate left is my third investigator, a kind of a special guest tonight. I don't want to give too much away, but Chester Drawers is well known to a lot of you because he is the owner of Chester's Barn and Grill. And lest we get confused, I did not say bar and grill, I said barn and grill, didn't I, Chester?
Well, there's a story behind that, boss, where, growing up, we've had a family farm for generations, growing sewing machine oil. And so it didn't fare so well during the 1930s, the Depression. So what we did is we took the barn that was on the property and we converted that to the restaurant, and we got some nice tax credits as a result of that. So that's why it's the Barn and Grill. I actually came up with that myself. I'm that clever.
Well, I have a copy of the menu. Can you show the people that? The most popular thing on your menu these days is the back-end redfish. that's very distinctive. I don't know of anybody else that serves it.
Yeah, it's an interesting story again, boss. Again, we didn't have much money growing up, and my mom, God bless her soul, would cook us redfish, but she would always discard the back end of the redfish, as is customary. And so one day I was left outside, as I usually was, for most of the night with no food. So when they threw some of the back ends out, I had some spare sewing machine oil and a little sterno furnace. So I actually fried up the back end of the redfish in the sewing machine oil and added a little bit of seasoning. It's delicious, so it's our specialty.
Well, and before that, you still serve the wonton killers. That used to be your main attraction. I think the restaurant had a different name at the time.
Yeah, it was the, what was that? The MSG spot, that was it.
Okay. I can see why you might have modified that as time went by. Chester, you also are the head of a citizens commission. I'm looking at a picture of it now. Your annual report has a picture. The Citizens Commission on Accommodation Stations, and these stations look like giant tubes. I guess an ordinary-sized person could stand up and walk around in one, but...
Yeah, well, I got that idea when I was in London for Queen Elizabeth's birth. I was actually, little known fact, I assisted the midwife, but I was fascinated by the London Tube, the very idea of the London Tube, and you could get around underneath. And so what I've done is I've built these tubes under cities now, so if citizens don't wish to get out in the humid, polluted air, they can just walk their dog through the tube and the whole 9 yards. So we every once in a while we have what we call an accommodation station within the tubes.
Very, very thoughtful of you. I have a copy of your recent book. So does my nephew. I think my niece also. You've written about restoring fish monuments for fun and profits, and my offspring, my relateds, have set up little hobby shops of their own to restore fish monuments.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a booming trend in the, I believe under one of the stimulus packages, there's going to be funds for restoring fish monuments throughout the country.
There's not that many left, I would think.
There's surprisingly more than you think, but they're in a state of disrepair, so I think it's important as part of the infrastructure repair that we repair our fish monuments. And profits are lagging a little bit, boss, but I think
they're lagging everywhere, aren't they, folks? Let's get to some news, because I have investigators here who know something about what you've been reading about or hearing about or seeing on TV lately. We like to back up a few weeks, because when you heard the story, you probably didn't hear all of it. What you heard was probably a wrong interpretation of the story, or it only told you part of the story. So let's start with Trump world, where we often start. The biggest hubbub these days is about some classified documents that were found at Trump's beach club. These documents were top secret, and I mean really high up the ladder of classification. In fact, they were classified OGB. I'm not sure what that is. As we go along, if you happen to remember what OGB is, just tune me in. But anyway, these documents shouldn't have been at Mar-a-Lago because they're classified, and presidents can't just take classified documents with them. So I know Trump was trying to cover things up, and what he did was he sent them out to a local establishment to have them, remodeled so they wouldn't look so offensive. And some of these things like top secret got changed to not secret, and that high classification OGB turned into DJT, et cetera, et cetera. And some of this language in some of the documents about nuclear weapons and things like that got changed. But the funny thing about it is, the final product looked pretty good. It was going to make for an interesting take on the story by Donald Trump. He was going to say, these are not classified. Look at how they came out. Not secret, for entertainment only, okay? You know what happened? It happens a whole lot in Trump world when he doesn't pay people for their services. We've got an invoice here from the Canon Print Pavilion. These are the people who did the work. They were going to send out all of these modified documents, but Trump wouldn't pay for the project, so he was left hanging, let's say, with all of these classified documents. Now, the fact is, though, that in trying to connect Trump to a crime, people were saying that they were classified, but he was saying that in his mind, or other parts of the body, I think that emerged later, in his mind he had declassified these documents.
He used his kidney. I wouldn't put anything past the guy, just saying.
Well, I'll tell you what. We have a note that y'all were telling me you could decipher it here. It looks like scribble, but somebody told me it's either an emoji or it's some...
I think it's the new family crest. It's distinctly that is 4 snakes fighting over a cheeseburger.
Okay, and it's been translated there. I guess you told me that is an accurate translation. Put this in the desk. Oh, put it in the desk, bozo. Well, anyway, it didn't get classified is the long and short of it, and people kept saying, you can't just mentally declassify things. So then they argued that there was some sort of a device they used, and this sort of reminds me of something on Star Trek or whatever, where you make it so you just push a button and certain things happen. Well,
I think that actually I managed to find my source. The device that's being used at Mar-a-Lago right now for all those declassifications. It says, Vladimir says niet. So there you go.
Well, you heard it from the head of the commission's mouth. I was going to say horse, but I know that's not part of the mineral kingdom yet. They're working on it. Some of the concrete ones.
Well, I'll have to sit on that joke.
Okay, listen. As a result of all of this, you probably know by now, Trump has been trying to get new lawyers. And we saw in the paper the other day, the new guy in town, some guy named Chip Gerba, joining the legal team. The face looks familiar, except for the mask on there. You can't really tell. But he's been written up in some legal journals lately because he got a $5 million settlement against some Rotary misfits, the big Rotary misfits. I don't know what that is, but I was reading one of the paper. Let me say, you know, at the top it says it's citing the case. Other big girls versus big Rotary other big girls. Isn't that OBG?
That's, I was not at liberty to say, but I knew it all along.
Other big girls.
There's another one that's a lot less family friendly, though, that they're keeping.
Okay, well, in any case, Trump is getting these new lawyers, all right? And let me just read from you here. I saw this on the TV last night. Trump's lawyers are getting lawyers from small towns to represent them.
It's like a whole pyramid scheme. Like it's a Russian doll pyramid scheme of the legal set.
Yes, and like it says here, many of these small town lawyers have never even seen a modern bus. I thought we had the text from that news show. Yeah, we do. They've never even seen a modern bus. They don't know very much about illustrated journals of fishing accidents, except for this guy, Boswell Hube. And Boswell Hube is relatively famous. He's a small-town attorney who wrote a book called The Law is a Whore. But as I am remembering it here now, you're saying that Jerba is really just a front man, that the real lawyer they hired is Roger Stone?
Yeah. Yep. Just
Roger Stone.
my network says that he's a popular guy. He hides in all the smallest
But he doesn't
holes
even,
and-
he doesn't have a driver's license, much less a bar license.
But I think he may have a barcode, boss. So.
And you were telling me he even lost his liquor license.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So he can't even drink on the job. But okay.
Oh, he's still trying. Trust,
well,
he's still
okay,
trying.
all right.
He has
well,
one of those hats, right, with the straw.
Yeah, the little.
I can if
yeah.
you need some tips, I've got a wealth of experience in that area, so just send them to me. There will be a nominal fee involved, of course. But
I got to tell you something. As a result of all of this, well, all of these problems, we have now a special master being appointed, and there's an anonymous book that was written about this topic. It's called A Special Master for a Special Mister, and it's written by, quote, anonymous. But I want you to know something. When you've got investigators like mine, you give them a little bit of data and they can unpack it for you, as the phrase goes these days. So first of all, you were telling me, Chester, that you know on the basis of some
certainly if we can bring up that slide again, you can
page 72
page
is what
22, I believe.
Yeah.
See that clearly had to be written by either a lawyer or judge, and my sources are telling me
Encumbrance of near substantial duplicity. Yeah,
that's a well-known phrase in the Florida appeals court. So I'm going with an appeals judge.
okay. And
Well, there's another excerpt in there that makes me heavily suspect that the author is a woman.
you're talking about page 241, I imagine.
Yeah, page 241. Check that out. Even though it was a struggle, I took the mascara out of my purse and rolled it to him as I held back the tears. I mean, come on, we got somebody of the feminine persuasion talking.
Well, of course,
so.
now some of your rock stars today of the male persuasion might be using mascara, but generally,
That's
Speaking of
fair.
rock stars, I mean, rocking around, there's also a reference in there to the Mackleberry, I think it's the Babcock variety. There's some reference in there that only occurs in our southeast peninsula. So again, I'm on that Florida
in
train.
Florida.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Florida thing.
So, in other words, the book says anonymous, but my investigators can tell you that it is a judge who is a woman who is living or working in Florida. And so that means that you can probably tell me who that is, right?
Can I be Paul Lind?
Yeah, I guess so. We're live, I guess. Anyway, like I say, there's been a lot of activity lately. There have been 30 or 40 subpoenas to people who are working in and around the former president's White House. That includes, as I'm told, the former White House animal trainer, the joke writers, blame shifters, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
I was on the London Tube with some of the leftover joke writers from the White House, and we got thrown off because we were airdropping too many subpoenaed photos.
You know what? Before they sent those subpoenas, I am told they were sending nice, polite request letters, and many of them were declined. I'm looking at this one here that's redacted, but it's even signed with love. They're just asking the people to do a recitation of damaging admissions in some hot and sweaty building, but they do say with love, but they were turned down, which I guess that explains why they had to do these subpoenas.
Well, I think, boss, you know, you're a big Beatles fan, but I believe they thought because they, you know, all you need is love. So if they express love, that would be all they would need to get the documents that they wanted. That's what my sources tell me.
I think there was a popular quartet that had a message like that. I mean, I may be remembering
All you need
it.
are subpoenas?
Huh?
All you need are subpoenas?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I forget what rhymes with it, though. You know what? Things were getting so tight that the FBI even confiscated the phone from Mr. Mr. Pillowman, let's just call him that, Mike Lindell. They got his phone. I'm not sure what they were looking for, but I think we'll find out, because guess where that phone is now?
Hey, you know what? I got it right here. Check it out.
Nine. I have the phone.
You think. I've got the phone.
Well, wait a minute. Now, y'all are confusing me because somebody sent me all of these. It wasn't one of you?
Well, where am I getting all these subpoena pics on this from then?
Well, I don't know, but that's how they do things in the modern age. Anyway, they also were going after Mike's pillows, okay? Picture number one, you've probably seen this before. This is just an ordinary special pillow from the Pillow Man. But apparently the NSA has devices that can look inside, and there you are, you're looking inside, but for the life of me, I can't figure out what that is inside that pillow. But we also have a classified document, and look at that. There is some sort of a device in there that reminds me of the one we saw earlier, the make it happen sort of device that was used to declassify documents. But I have a surprise for all you investigate. You usually bring me the stories, but this time I've got to tell you something. I got a hold of the pillow and the pillowcase, and I got a hold of a special device. I haven't even looked at it myself, but this is what they have inside that pillow is a
The front half of a Roomba.
yeah, something like that.
Clearly a toxic waste
Is this a
filtration
part
device.
of a fish monument, maybe? Or is this
Possibly.
from the Mineral Kingdom? Or is this what the NFL linebackers are using instead of helmets?
Well, it certainly looks familiar because I know Tom Brady destroyed at least one last week.
Well, I'm going to ask all of y'all to look at that when you have a little time, because maybe we can get to the bottom of it, even though the January 6th committee is sort of dragging their heels. But I'll tell you who's not dragging their heels: the state of New York. They are going after Mr. Trump and his family on the basis of some inflated values for the penthouse. And we have a picture right there of what is alleged to be the game room at the top of the penthouse. This was, I was told in prior testimony, courtroom testimony from the former president, that this was a giant room about 300 by 200, and if you're asking me, it looks like it's about 8 by 10.
Well, he does have a history of inflating his assets, so to speak. He's, I mean, how do you think he got all those dates with supermodels back in the, and Stormy Daniels, I think, put clear to the rumor that he has large assets.
Yeah, you were telling me some of the NFL players, they have the same shoulder pads, but they have different assets.
Yeah, definitely different assets, yeah.
Yes. Also, what this comes down to, if you want me to bring it down to, bare, what do they call that? Bare knuckles or something. Anyway, Trump is in such big trouble that he is looking for a new gig. And we have some correspondence. I don't think you were supposed to see this. He wrote to what nowadays we would call Charles III, the new king of Britain, England. But anyway, he's just mentioning that he's between gigs and congratulating him on the big money headgear, which is different than the gear I just showed you there. So let's leave behind national politics for a minute. Let's get regional. I'd like to talk about some people named Abbott and DeSantis, if you want to know precisely, because what these boys have been doing is trying to use some people who immigrated here to the States for some sort of political stunts, I think they're called. Now, we know that both Mr. Abbott and Mr. DeSantis are very into asylum sneakers. You've seen the footwear ads, I'm sure. Some of my investigators have even bought some of these shoes just for testing purposes.
It helps them run from the Secret Service. When the Secret Service runs after your van and it attempts to service and service and service.
And that reminds me, speaking of outrunning people, we have a news story. It wasn't covered very much. You know that Governor Abbott is sending buses to to D.C., and apparently he accidentally, on purpose, sent Ken Paxton up to D.C. on a bus.
It was actually Paxton's accident. He was being chased by a process server, and he thought it was the 532 North Mopac Express. He thought it was a Cap Metro bus, and he was going to be able to Uber back. But man, that Uber bill that he got Ubering back, hoo-hoo, that was a doozy.
I bet that drained the the campaign's treasury.
I feel bad for the process server because due to the low budget, his only vehicle to take to places to serve subpoenas, as we all know about subpoenas, is the bicycle. So he had to chase that bus all the way to Washington D.C. on his bicycle.
Okay. You want high quality 26-inch tires when that comes up, I guess. And speaking of 26-inch tires, did you see this picture of the brand new bus that got up? It got sent to D.C., but it was empty. I don't quite understand that. Does anybody have an insight?
I think it was a test vehicle. There's a new type of diesel fuel that's actually being made from sewing machine oil, recycled sewing machine oil. So I think this was basically a prototype and a test case to see if that could be commercialized and used on a bus. But they're having a little trouble because they still have sewing needles in there, so they didn't want anyone on the bus.
I think that what Norma was telling me the other day, maybe you don't want to say it in public, but we think, or some of us have been told, that Governor Abbott sent this brand new electric bus up to D.C. to prove another point that we just want filthy buses polluting.
Oh yeah, and it's working because here in Houston we've had 3 pollution air warnings in a row, so it's working. It's actually really working for his stock too.
Okay, I heard that one thing Abbott has thought about doing, he's not doing it yet, but there's a test that he might want to follow up on, and that would be letting people out of the prisons, and I mean hundreds of people out of the prisons, and sending them up to D.C. He let some of them out, like for recess the other day. They took a group picture, but he didn't actually put them on the buses because, like you say, they were out of sewing machine oil, so they couldn't actually go anywhere that day. But they also have a theory that they can take all of the Beto supporters here in Texas who might present, kind of a problem for the sitting governor, and send them all up to New York. Why? I'm not sure why New York, but in any case.
Why not?
Why not? Yes, because it is a rock and roll thing. Ron DeSantis, as I've been trying to indicate to you, was getting the best of Mr. Abbott, or Governor Abbott if you prefer, by offering an even better deal to some of these immigrants. He was going to put them up in a groovy place and take them to a show, and actually, I am told he was going to send them in orbit, was the next thing, but we'll get to that because we're going to talk about outer space. But first, I'd like to talk about fantasy football just because, because fantasy football is almost as popular as actual football. I know, for example, Norma, that you are heavily invested in the sport.
Oh, boss, I am so excited for the inaugural edition of the Paul Colby and the Investigators Fantasy League, as you can see by the slide here. Boss and I are pretty, we're pretty well matched. I had my eye on Falls Downman after he's back this week after last week's multiple contusions. So, but I really think that Taco Tuesday, the rookie out of Hump Tulips, Washington, I think he's just going to be the star of the season.
Well, you understand all of this better than I, but what I have paid attention to is some legal problems that some of the big names in fantasy are having lately. For example, drag kings, they apparently got in trouble. A lot of people thought that they were going to be able to draft somebody other than Charles to be the next monarch in Great Britain, and so they apologized for it, but a lot of people were confused. And then the other one, FanDuel, they were just served with a class action lawsuit, and I don't understand exactly why, but they're having big problems as well.
I'm so disappointed. I think I was playing the wrong fantasy football. I mean, I showed up as Gandalf and I'm yelling, "Thou shall not pass!" And no one.
Oh,
lost.
If no one's passing, then I know a few teams that are
screwed,
having
right?
that problem. Yeah,
You just got right by an orc in the gut.
yeah.
I would like to mention, though, that all of this is about money, and money does talk. So in California right now, you have two different propositions to take this fantasy football a little further. One of them would involve giving it to the tribes. You can see there are a lot of advantages. If you go to a casino, you could have casino and cuisino. You might be interested in that, Chester. And of course, you would have a lot of jobs for some dropouts, locally sourced milk. I'm not sure what the appeal is there. But there's another proposition would be to have everything online. I can see how that would be attractive to people. You don't have to be fully clothed. You can drink your own booze, which would be cheaper. In fact, Chester, you were telling me that people who are even 8 or 9 or 10 years old could pretend to be somebody old enough to gamble, and
I'm really not at liberty to discuss people under the age of 18, boss, but I'm sure you understand that. So.
Okay, so our conversation was off the record.
Yeah.
Off the record. Okay, like I'm saying, money, in this case, money talks like it does everywhere else, and so you even have college sports looking for more money. The Big 12 is expanding. I think it's going to become the Big 31. That's how many they have so far. And that's not necessarily the end of the expansion. There could be more. But I know that my favorite, I used to watch all the time on the weekends to see how Schrodinger's College was doing. They used to play people like the Holy Ghost Patrol. But if they get into the Big 31, think of the money they'll make.
There is a problem with them, though, boss. You never know until the opening whistle. You never know whether the team is there or not there. So that's going to be a little tough to translate for the larger television audience, I think.
Well, the great thing about Schrodinger's College, though, is when they do blow the whistle, you don't know if they're showing up to play football or hockey or what they're going to be doing on the field. They may all be dead. We don't know.
Fantasy football, I'm afraid, has morphed into fantasy everything. So it seems to be invading the political sphere. For example, I guess you have heard that the gubernatorial candidate, Mr. Mastriano, famously was saying, you don't need to vote because I've already decided this election. If Donald Trump doesn't win, I'm going to throw out the ballots because he won already. So, in other words, in some of these fantasy, now I know you've been watching international news, and a certain once big power is going around to various homes, and people at gunpoint are being asked to do they vote for such and such a referendum? Now, we haven't got to that point here. I mean, that'll probably be a couple more weeks before we get to that. But like I say, some people are saying, who needs the election? It's not really, you don't need an election. We know who won, okay? So a lot of people will tell you that the Republican Party, for example, is trying to win without actually having a platform. They're just saying, we're not the Democrats, so vote for us. But they do have some policies. For example, I was studying their gun control reform proposal the other day, and it really is interesting. Point number one, they say we should prohibit gun sales to drunk drivers. But you were telling me, Ben, they only mean you can't be drunk when you're buying the weapons. You can be sober when you buy them and then go out after you bought the gun and tank it up.
Yeah, a little pew-pew with the liquor, yep.
That doesn't happen in the mineral kingdom, I'm sure.
No, well, it takes a while to get drunk, like a long while, like a lot of shots.
And besides which, those people don't even have guns. They just have earthquakes and...
pellet shooters.
Yeah.
Brings a whole new meaning to the term doing shots. So
I can see how that happens. Look at point two. Point two, make thoughts and prayers mandatory. Now, this is like some of the Republican senators were proposing that anybody who's going to commit a mass shooting has to announce it. And they were going to have a government-sponsored bulletin board where you could announce your next mass shooting. But that wasn't going down well with a lot of people, and so they changed it. The sponsors now said you're going to have mandatory thoughts and prayers. But what you were explaining, Norma, this looks like a backdoor way of getting prayer back into the public schools.
Yeah, that's true. In fact, first I got flyered about the mass shooting. A kid came to my door and actually let me know, this was happening, and so I made sure I moved. And then then I was flyered again by the same kid after he got shut down, and he said, okay, well, you need to get your thoughts and prayers in order in advance. And I said, well, am I going to have to move again? It's getting a little ridiculous.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry you got irritated with the younger set, but
Every time.
point three in the gun control reforms was adopting the John Smith laws nationwide. Now let me explain this. It used to be you could go to a gun show, you could buy a gun, and some people would just sign their name, John Smith, as if, you know. Well, it turns out there was a guy in Seattle, his name was John Smith, and he went to he wanted to buy a gun, he signed his name John Smith. They said, you can't do that. You can't be John Smith. And he said, I am John Smith. And so he had to eventually go to court to get all of this work. I think his father was with the law firm of Smith & Wesson, right?
Yep.
And so, you know, two birds with one stone. Anyway, like I say...
Is he going to retain, maybe he can retain Gerba? I believe Gerba used to work for Smith, Wesson, and Howe, but I'm not sure. That's still okay. I'll look into that, boss.
Yes, because I still think it's probably Roger Stone we're talking about, and that hologram out there is Chip Gerga. Well, but he did have the case against the Rotary Misfits, so I'm not going to say no. Here's Republicans, they are saying lately, just to close out this segment here, there was a poll asking some people in the Republican Party running for various office, if the election results say that you won, are you going to challenge them? And they all said either no or hell no. So let's go from politics to outer space. Why is NASA being so ambitious? One thing they did, they sent up a little buggy about the size of a golf cart to crash into an asteroid to see if they could make it move around. So that was pretty, that was cinematic. But what they're doing in the meantime, they're talking about going back to the moon. So why are they in such a hurry to go back to the moon?
Free cheese.
Yeah, free. No.
I got some intel on this.
Okay.
The people behind it are, we'd assume it was Elon Musk, we'd assume it was Starbucks, or
that are going to
some
the
territory. Yeah.
Yeah.
But turns out it's actually DeSantis and Abbott trying to figure out if they can bust some migrants to the moon, if that's going to work or not.
Are they going to use that new experimental bus, do you think? Is that? I think you may have uncovered the true story about that empty bus.
That
was a
bus
I
needs
mean,
to
I
be-
think-
my
it's a
information
test
is
bus.
incorrect. That's a prototype for the moon bus.
I think it's a test bus, and you know what? The more buses, if you send one to the moon, imagine how much just, smog you can belch out into the atmosphere. Like, just hit the whole planet all at once. Not just
It's starting to make some sense now, I'm afraid.
I think I'm onto something.
I'm afraid you're possibly right.
I think you get an attaboy for that.
You know what? I have seen a lot of documentary stuff on TV lately, because documentaries are getting to be more interesting than than the violent special effects shows. Anyway, a popular theme on documentaries these days is the transition from ordinary remodeling to remaking your walk-in bathroom tub. You would be surprised, well, maybe you wouldn't. If you saw the show also, you wouldn't be surprised. There are so many things you can do now with your bathroom, although I have to wonder what some of them are about. For example, you could put in a whole set of commodes. And I guess if you have board meetings in your men's room,
I heard bathroom remodelers are paid scale. Is that true?
You'd have to ask him. He works on fish monuments. I have no expertise.
Yeah, it's of course it's a different scale than the fish monument scale. I'm sure, but as I'm sure you're aware. But yeah, they're generally paid scale or.
But they tend to just scrape by.
Yeah, I agree with that. They're
Let me show-
they can be kind of grouchy too.
let me show you another thing that I saw that they can do. They can put in some liquid natural gas pipes that go straight into your bathroom, and that means, I suppose, you would never have to go gas up at the tank, right? But am I right? There are some very big natural gas tubes under the water near Denmark that are leaking right now, right? Might be sabotage. Well, what if you put this in your bathroom and then it starts leaking?
Well, I actually had that problem in my last house, but thanks to that kid, it's no longer a problem. I was able to just kind of take off.
Okay.
I did hear the Denmark thing, and I also heard that's why the Danish queen decided to take the royal titles away from her grandchildren, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, that.
Wait, over a gas problem?
Well, I think she got a little fumes, you know, going
So
on.
the dinner table, you usually kind of discipline the children. That goes away.
Well,
So is that did
See,
that gas problem lead to the invention of that multiple commode bathroom, perhaps?
they did have multiple commodes in one bathroom, so she's kind of woo these days. So you know, we think it might be the gas leak. I'm still looking into it. This is this is an
okay.
action item for
Or
me.
lack of proper gas removal in the
We
bathroom.
probably should follow that one up.
With Ich bin ein Danish.
Hey, if you've had Danish food, you know, I'm not going to go into gas leaks on that, but yeah.
Let me just point out also that if you want to really break the bank, you know, spend everything you can also have a beach community, a functioning beach community in your bathtub area. I'm not sure exactly how that works. Probably uses one of those devices. It might even be some kind of hologram. I don't know.
Well, it has like little hobbit-sized people that are used, so it's full-size being a relative term, kind of like the football players were.
Well, I was asking them how much a Mar-a-Lago would cost, but I couldn't afford it. They said that damn thing is made out of plastic, so be careful, Bubba. Anyway, I got one more topic I just have to get to here before we have to close it down, because we always have to close things down before we get to everything that you guys need to know. But it's about the way that book banning has just expanded and expanded and expanded. I have a picture here. This is supposedly, this is all that remains of the Ellis-Noga High School library. That's it. Everything else has been banned. But let me say this. Some of the things being banned these days, I read them and I thought they contributed to my growth. For example, there is a girl who is on trial now for burning down an entire suburb. She blames Ray Bradbury. She read Fahrenheit 451. And then, I don't understand the picture, but that's what happened. And then there was this other lady named Selma, and you can never trust a lady named Selma. You know that, Norma, okay? And she read To Kill a Mockingbird. I guess you shouldn't read that on an empty stomach, huh? You should have some starch if you're going to do that.
Yeah, I've had some serious issues back in my days with To Kill a Mockingbird. It was very, especially I remember my 30th birthday, but fair to say I actually don't remember my 30th birthday.
That's funny. A lady named Selma ruined my 30th birthday. So
Yeah, she was sent to a banned encampment.
I think there's some rock formation named Selma also that was considered armed and dangerous. I mean, you didn't mention that in the lecture. I was going to stand up and ask a question, but
I'm glad you didn't.
I think Selma, that rock formation is two pretty much perfect geodesic domes abutting one another.
One other book. There's a convicted drug dealer, and he says the reason that he went down that wrong path years and years ago is because he read Orwell's Animal Farm. And it was all uphill from there. So there you go. Like I say, we try to cover as many subjects as we can, but we never get to everything. And that's why we come back to see you again. So I expect that we will be seeing you again. And probably we'll have different names and different phones and maybe even different addresses, because that's what it takes to get around in this free country of ours anymore. I'm sorry, Ben, if we're interrupting something. Okay, all right. But like I say, we will be back, and we're counting on you to be there when we come back. Okay? So I'm signing 30 for this. Now, Norma, you were telling me something about the...
Yeah, one second. Let's see. It's another subpoena pick. All right, so so I went to our agent's office, right, to talk about the promotion for the show.
Yeah.
He had the wildest story about this group that came in that wanted to talk to him. It was a family act, and the guy comes in. He says, "Hey, you know, we have an act. I was wondering if I could just, you know, have a minute of your time." And
do I know this guy?
all right, our agent? Yeah, I would hope so. Jeez.
I didn't. Okay.
So yeah, well, you know, I can't say
Some
his
guy
name on the air, of course.
Wearing
but
shoulder pads. That guy.
Yeah, I can't say his name on the air, but yeah, you know, he goes undercover like us. So this family comes in. They say we're a family act, and you know, we're kind of a novelty act. We just need a minute of your time. You know, of course, our agent says, okay, you got 1 minute, and you know, tell me about your act. And the guy says, well, you know, it's a novelty thing, and you know, it's me and my wife, and he's in a tuxedo. Music starts, we do a little dance, and then at the end, you know, my wife lifts up her skirt, and should I keep going from here? Are we still on the air? Is this because I know this is a family show, and this thing gets kind of.
Excuse me.
It's kind of awkward.
That was my tequila.
Did you just abscond with your tequila?
Mockingbird.
Well, that's just wrong.
You just can't get good help these days, I tell you.
That's just, geez.
Who was that guy? Is he a linebacker?
I don't know, but check
I
your
didn't
phone.
have any shoulder pads on, but well. So anyway, yeah. So the wife lifts her skirt, right? And then
Sometimes I come home from the warehouse. I come on home without a map. I put my foot down on the pedal, and I rarely need help. I'm wearing these new socks you gave me. They're beautiful. Sometimes I go to the PTA meeting to get a look at Johnny's biology teacher. She has a fox in a bottle of formaldehyde, or so I am told. Now go out and dig that Pacific